In to clear the streets. Hundreds of police in Hong Kong clashed with demonstrators who had blocked another road near government headquarters. Protesters used umbrellas to shield them from attack and refused to budge. Chaos ensued and many demonstrators were wrestled to the ground. The standoff continued for hours. Police had earlier tried to disperse protesters from the tunnel, but briefly retreated. This was their second attempt, and they were determined to clear the road. Dozens of protesters were arrested, and some demonstrators have since accused police of brutality. Violent scenes like this in Hong Kong have so far been rare, but there is a sense now that this standoff cannot continue indefinitely. Earlier, police dismantled some major blockades and reopened key traffic routes. But the protesters still hold a lot of ground, and their encampments will be harder to move. They're vowing to continue to fight for full democracy, rather than a version by Beijing that picks the candidates for them.
Without any true promise, solid promise from the government, the protesters are not going to back down that easily. So they will only prolong the movement if the police are trying to evict the road so violently.
It's been nearly 3 weeks since these demonstrations began, and with police now into their third day of clearing the streets, it now looks like the beginning of the end for these protests. Laura Westbrook, BBC News.
Let's go live now to Hong Kong. Our correspondent Juliana Liu. Juliana, it's what, just after 11 in the morning there. Those scenes we've been looking at, looking pretty ugly. What's going on?
Well, Mike, at the moment it's pretty quiet. At the moment, the demonstrators, several hundreds of them, are still in different locations. We've not heard reports of police moving in to remove any barricades. At the moment, the attention is on a video report from the local broadcaster TVB that was shot around the same time as the images that you've just seen, just after the police cleared that area outside the chief executive office. Those images show a demonstrator named Ken Zhang. He was handcuffed. He was led by half a dozen police officers to an area outside of the demonstration site, and he is seen on the ground. He is seen being kicked and punched by at least several of those officers. The person has been identified as Ken Zhang, a social worker and a member of the Civic Party. He has also been confirmed to have been one of the electors, one of the 1,200 electors who voted in the 2012 election that eventually selected C.Y. Leung as the current chief executive. The police have issued a statement on that, saying that they've expressed concern over the video clip showing several plainclothes officers suspected of using excessive force. They've said that they will handle the investigation in a just and impartial manner. Now, there have been other complaints about police brutality over the last 2 weeks, but this one looks very different, because it's not just a matter of police engaging or confronting demonstrators during a cleanup effort. It looks like, according to these pictures at least, that he was taken aside and treated rather roughly.
Yeah, Juliana, there had been a sense, I guess, that the protests were in some ways winding down as police managed to move the roadblocks and get traffic moving again. This kind of incident we've just been seeing is likely to inflame people, I guess, possibly bring more people back on the street.
That's absolutely right. We've not seen this kind of confrontation between police and demonstrators since essentially the first night that the occupation happened, when dozens of rounds of tear gas were fired at protesters, and people came out on the streets after that, even people who were essentially much more neutral in their political stance, in order to support the students after they saw that they were being treated or bullied, as they were saying in their words. And that's what really made this into a much bigger movement. So it's very possible that these images, which are being widely shared on social media, will bring more people onto the streets.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think now we can speak to Tessa Arcila. She's a freelance news correspondent based in Hong Kong. in the Admiralty district at the moment. Tessa, thanks for coming through to us. What are you seeing? What are you hearing there?
Well, right now I'm at the main Admiralty protest site. Everything is calm. The tents are still here, and I've spoken to some of the protesters who are here right now, who were involved in the occupation of the Longview Road, which is right beside the government offices last night, and they said that they had voted together to occupy the road again, and that's what later on led to clashes. And I think one of the issues that we see here is that some of the groups here don't see themselves as part of the bigger Occupy groups, the student federations, and they say that they're making decisions for themselves, and this is what results in decisions on whether or not to reoccupy streets that have already been cleared by police. And the expectation is that the police might come in again, although they don't know when, because this cannot go on indefinitely. But for now, they're holding their ground. They expect more people to come out because of the reports of the police beating last night, and that is the situation right here at Admiralty.
Yes, which of course the police have said in that statement they are now going to investigate. We all saw that incident earlier where the police were clearly outnumbered and had to withdraw, and it seemed likely they were going to come back in some force. It does seem as if the feeling around these protests has radically changed now, and yet, Tessa, if the police keep the roads clear, keep traffic running, even if they come in as hard as this, it's very hard to see what more the protesters can do with so little sign of political movement, either from the Hong Kong leadership or from Beijing.
Well, that's right, and that is why also when we saw some of the police officers clearing some of the barricades, they didn't confront the police anymore, because some of the protesters do understand that there's nothing they can do against riot police who are trying to clear the barricades, and politically it is a stalemate, and they don't see any talks happening. But again, as I mentioned, those pockets of groups inside the protest movement who are really determined and adamant to stay, they're the ones who say that they don't mind confronting police, but those are few in numbers. So it is an impasse, and the students don't have many options. They've been trying to lay out a few options for the government, but we've heard from China just over the weekend that they're putting their support behind the chief executive, despite speculations that they might let him go because of some allegations of him having received money from a private firm. So many speculations happening, but China is still putting its weight behind the CE. The students think nothing is going to happen, but they want to stay their ground. Some of them do. Some are already trying to avoid some confrontation. But again, those small groups who say they're not represented, I think, will stay and hold their ground.
Yeah, Tessa, it's clear from the picture we're seeing now, much more peaceful, of course, but it's clear the protesters still hold quite a bit of ground. But do you get the sense from these latest, much more serious incidents, the police have decided the protests must end, because it could then get much rougher from here on?
I think so, and yes, last night I was there right when it was all happening, and I could see the mood among police officers. It was different the previous nights. They were not reacting to people jeering or berating them in public, but last night I did see individual police officers react to some of what the people have been saying, many of them shouting that they should be ashamed of themselves, that they're puppets of the Chinese government, that they have no face to show their families. So last night the police officers were more hot-headed, and you can feel really the stress and tension coming from their side. And so it was expected, I think, that they reacted tougher than they did in the past 2 weeks.
Tessa Asila there in the Admiralty district, thanks very much for coming through to us.